Good evening, everyone. This is the March 19th, 2019 Town of Monroe Planning Board regular meeting. Noreen, if you would take a roll call of the attendance, please.
Anthony Vaccaro.
Here.
Lisa McQuaid.
Here.
Bonnie Franson.
Here.
James McKnight.
Here.
Jason Sorensky.
Here.
Jeff Manson.
Here.
John Allegro.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum. All our members are present. I'd like to point out the fire exits. There's one at the main entry in front of me, another over by the kitchen, and one behind me that exits out to the parking lot. If we would all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
It's duplicated.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is a public hearing for Eagleview Estates. If the applicant would come up. But prior to opening the public hearing, I believe we have to first take seeker action.
Yes.
Yes? And I believe this action is an unlisted action. A short form EAF had been prepared. I read through it. In general, this property isn't particularly constrained. So I would, and we will prepare a resolution. It will be incorporated into our decision. But for purposes of opening up the public hearing, I recommend that we determine that this is a negative declaration, which essentially means that an environmental impact statement is not required for this action and there will not be any significant adverse impact. If new information comes up during the public hearing, we can always amend that determination, but to open the public hearing, we have to make it a determination. So with that, I make a motion to issue a negative declaration for the proposed action. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Please take vote.
Anthony
Paul?
Vaccaro.
Support. Yeah. Yes.
Bonnie Franson.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes.
James McKnight.
Yes.
Jeff Manson.
Yes.
Lisa McQuaid.
Aye.
Jason Sorensky.
Aye.
John Allegro.
Aye.
Thank you.
The second motion then is a motion to open the public hearing. I'll make that motion. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Public hearing is opened. Were all notices sent in accordance with our...
Yes, I received an email, and this is the greens that they have received back as of date, which is a good portion of them.
Okay. Why don't we have a presentation first of the proposed application, and then we will open it to public comment.
I have 2 people signed up so far.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, as we've been discussing for the last few months, we're proposing a 3-lot subdivision on property off of Lakes Road and also off of Walton Terrace. There exists 1 lot. The second lot is being proposed, having the subdivision proposed, which would create 3.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Which would create 3 lots. We have shown and indicated that this 3-lot subdivision would meet the requirements of a traditional or conventional approach to the zoning code. Then we've also demonstrated how this 3-lot subdivision would further benefit from a clustered development, which improves the property a great deal and would allow for an amicable and contextual 3 homes to that neighborhood. All 3 homes would be serviced by the sewer system. The 3 homes would be also serviced by well for water. And as part of the cluster development, a good portion of the land will be conserved or preserved per the town code, so that no further development could occur in that area. So it preserves the land.
Thank you for the presentation. With that, I'm going to open it up to the public if you have any comments or questions. But before you make your comments, please provide your name and your residence where you're located, your address. Anybody?
We have Ward Bauer would like to speak.
Ward?
Where do we speak from?
Gotta come up to the table. Sit next to David.
David, are you safe?
I'm the only one in quarantine.
He doesn't bite.
I am as safe as can be.
I'm talking about germs.
I'm germ-free.
There was a discussion before you got here. Ward Brawler, Conservation Commission, Town of Monroe. Take this opportunity to speak for the board. Little catching up for us to do. We hadn't had this opportunity in almost a year and some, because up till January of 2018, we had a position at the desk, our speakers. So some of these comments are a little belated. This market on Eagle Ridge, I'm curious to know what group of people are you marketing these homes to? Standard family or the supersized family?
Well, I am not the owner, so I really couldn't confirm where the market would be, yet the size of the homes are smaller, so it would preclude a large family.
Thank you. Take it that you don't know. It does make a difference in this town. Demographics have changed, and seeker has not caught up with it. We've made this comment many times. Supersized families are the dominant buying public, and they have a different impact other than the one we follow through seeker. I had a discussion many times. The buck was passed always over to the Board of Health, being their call as to how much water and sewer would be demanded. However, Board of Health in the past has already gone on record as saying that's the job of the lead agency to determine the number of people on the property. All their job is to determine, you tell them the number of people in a house and they'll tell you how much water and sewer you need. So that is important. The next thing is relating to, this is SR 15, is that not correct? I'm gonna know that? Okay, thank you, Dave. We had a comprehensive plan where we did some upgrading of the zoning. I noticed that the RR1 took a hit, retroactive hit, when you got rid of the builder's lot, or builder's acre, 40,000, jumped it up to 43 and odd feet. And I never got an explanation why that change took place. Was it for environmental reasons or not? I presume it was. And that's the case. If we're going to do a retroactive zoning, this would have been the perfect place to do a retroactive zoning. SR 15, even with sewer, you're on a lake or near a lake, in a drainage field into a lake, which happens to be a reservoir. And just because you have sewer, that's not the only source of pollution. Whenever you have lawn areas, you have three sources of pollution: fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides. And there's always the potential of a sewer failure. So that was just curious why this wasn't retroactively, that zone, and not you in particular, David. You just happen to be a victim of this. I'm sure you don't know, but I'm just curious with the planners why they didn't foresee that.
I'll, to the extent we can respond this evening, I'll
Okay.
respond, or the board can respond, or our consultants, and then we can follow up with
Would
additional
appreciate that.
responses.
Okay. So that's really, and this is another sidebar comment since my comments have been pent up. It might be prudent to go back to the old way of starting at 7:30, because I've noticed I have a problem, I notice a lot of people have a problem, especially if you have a busy day, making this meeting. And we do often get, I've noticed, we do get members that come in later, and then we're losing the advantage of their input. May take that into consideration. And that's it for now. Oh, one other thing. It's not too informative for, I know, for me or for the audience to be watching the back of the monitor. That doesn't help us at all. That could be correct, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward. We'll go through some of the comments after we receive the additional comments, so there may be some duplication. Does anybody else want to come up and
we have.
offer comments?
Lorna? She can come up regarding the,
It's not regarding this application? Oh,
oh, okay, I thought you were coming to regarding the application. Okay, is somebody else though? Okay, if you can just sign in for me before, I'd appreciate it.
and you can just state your name for the record and then your address when you sit
Just
down.
sign in here for me. And then when you sit down, you can state your name and address.
Cynthia Francis, 404 Lakes Road. I received a letter, thank you. That's why I'm here. Of course, I'm not aware of the project, so I wanted to get some more insight, as it is pretty close to where I dwell.
What is your address again?
404 Lakes Road.
So this, if you can, I don't know if you can see here the monitor. That was the point Ward brought up. I don't know if we can maybe angle it a little, George.
Thank you.
Are you next to the property? Where are you about on Lakes Road?
I think it said the letters are 200.
So if we're heading toward
Stone
Chester,
House.
there's right, the house with the pool,
Yes,
and then there's another.
that's me.
That's you,
House with
the-
the pool.
The house with the pool.
Yes.
So you're right next to it.
Yes.
Okay. And then it looks like there's some kind of. Is this part of the application as well? This small, narrow lot,
Oh, just
David?
No, I
Narrow
believe,
lot's
no,
not
I believe that's labeled as Francis on the, is that 59.1?
Yeah, that's showing as
That's you, right.
Cynthia Francis.
that's me.
Okay, so you own an additional smaller lot that's kind of providing a buffer between this larger
Yes.
lot and this one.
Yes.
So there, you can see the map that David has. And perhaps, David, again, you can explain where the houses are going to be and where the conservation easement area is relative to the dwelling.
I believe you're right around here on this map. This is all vacant land.
Yes.
Right to you, we are subdividing that into 2 lots, and we're putting houses located to the north of the lots, since everybody can't see where I'm pointing. And then the lower portion is gonna be dedicated as conservation land, so there'll be no development over here.
Okay.
And which is great because it preserves the view of the lake.
Right.
In addition to that, there's a 3rd lot off of Walton Terrace that's gonna be, that is designed right now to house the 3rd house of this 3-lot subdivision. And that access will come off of Walton Terrace.
I
Actually,
see.
all 3 will be off of Walton Terrace.
Okay. That was a concern, preserving the area.
Yes, so approximately a half an acre will be preserved.
Okay. And will further information be provided as to when this is going to take place, how it's going to impact us in the surrounding area?
Well, as far as when it's gonna take place, I'm hoping for an approval. So we can all say yay and get that, but I do not have an answer, but I would imagine as soon as we get approval, the owner would be looking to develop the 3 homes.
Okay. I'll have to leave my questions to that at this time. I just appreciate being informed.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Will this be available publicly?
I have it in the town hall. You can
Okay.
stop by the town hall planning board department,
Okay.
and you can look at the plans, and you can look at anything that I have available.
I appreciate that.
Just personal information is taken away.
Of course, of course. Thank you.
Which I think actually going forward, Mike, is there requirements now that where a website exists, the plan should be on the website?
Yes.
So I think we need
Have
to,
them put up tomorrow.
yeah, we need to have a site where the public can access and take a look at the plans, rather than having to come here because some people can't make meetings. So we
Exactly.
appreciate
Did
you
we
were,
work rather?
we appreciate you were able to attend.
Thank you.
So we'll get those on the web.
I appreciate that.
Thank
I'll
you.
give-
Put up tomorrow.
I'll let you
can call
continue.
me in town hall anytime, and I can answer anything,
Do you have
or,
a card?
no, I don't,
But I
but.
can call in.
Yeah, he'll just tear off the
783-1900. Ask for the town clerk. She'll forward you to Noreen.
bottom. Yeah, I'll just,
Thank you.
okay, just take this. My name and my direct extension.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak with regard to this proposed subdivision, or do you have any questions? I did put the map here on the screen if you want to take a look. Anyone? No? Okay. Sean, where are we at this point in the review process?
Mark has some comments here. I wouldn't call them any major issues. The thing I do want to point out is number 2 of his comments, which is on page 2. That
Excuse me, I have not received a copy of the comment, so we're at a disadvantage.
His might not be, yeah.
Thank you.
So we're receiving this evening as well. Oh, it was mailed yesterday? Okay.
You might,
Oh, yesterday.
yeah. Well, Mark sent them to me on St. Patty's Day.
All right. Would you like to work through these?
I'm sorry.
Would you like to go through these
I
in
can
general?
if you'd like. They're relatively minor.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to go through bullet by bullet. I can if you'd like.
Why don't you, rather than going bullet by bullet, if there's anything that really rises
Yeah, just
to a substantive issue that needs to be addressed, rather than, let's say, typos or anything of that
yeah,
nature?
and maybe number 2. He provided some comments on the bulk compliance, but one of the bigger things is that he understands that the town code does not subtract values for private road or right of way. So he wanted to point that out. Not sure if you know of anything different.
The environmental constraints provisions, as far as I know, do not subtract out for the lot area.
Okay.
But, so are you saying that the private road is in an easement, which is part of the lot area then?
I'm not sure if it is counted as part of the lot area in the plan submitted, but I'm thinking he's trying to confirm that that's the case, that the right-of-way should not be subtracted from the lot area.
So, David, as far as the lot sizes and the road is not on its own separate parcel. It's it's on an easement area, or within an easement area.
Correct.
And if you were to look at the lot sizes, the lot side includes the area of the private road in determining the total lot area?
I believe so.
Okay. So we'll need to examine that. Any others? That was a primary
That
substantive
was
comment?
a primary comment. The others are more or less administrative, I would think.
So, if I look real quickly, private road width must be 26 feet by state code, not 24 feet as called out.
Well, some of these items were agreed upon at the technical meeting.
Okay, and were they, but do we have revised plans yet or not yet?
These are the revised plans, you know, we.
The ones
agreed
that we received this evening in our packets?
Correct.
Okay.
So, we had the technical meeting, we agreed on certain things. Some of these comments contradict, the conclusions that we had come to at the technical meeting.
One of the other comments, and seems to be substantive, no new well is shown for proposed Lot 1. It's questionable if the existing well in the shoulder area of the private road be used to serve Lot 1. So is it that, I guess Mark believes that it shouldn't be in the easement area for the road? Since it's in the shoulder area?
Yeah, we're not proposing a well in the road area. That I would almost guarantee.
Do we know if these comments were done after the technical meeting or before? Because it's not dated, that's why I'm asking if we know.
These were dated March 19th.
Oh, they weren't? Oh, okay. Thanks.
He sent them to me on Sunday for tonight's meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, so then the 19th is the date of the meeting, actually.
Right.
I mean,
You're right. He sent them to me on Sunday, though.
Bonnie, in either case, we can locate the well
Outside?
outside the area. That's not a problem. It's all 3 lots are serviced by sewer, so we're not
Right.
conflicted or restricted by those type of distances. So
Right.
locating the well is not going to be an issue.
We would just need to make sure that if there are any septics surrounding your property, that it's the minimum separation distance that's required.
The surveyor did. I know we have that information, and we can include that. That's not a problem.
So this map is actually, I can see the well for the lot that's off of Walton Terrace. And
Right, I think he's,
referring to the,
the well that's on the opposite side of the roadway. I
Yeah.
believe that well is existing already. And then the line runs underneath the road, or the proposed private road on Lot 1.
yeah, I'm trying to see here. This,
Are we on SP5?
6.
let me go to SP6. SP6. Oh, I have it, well, this is an older plan set.
Yeah, SP6 of the February 28th set.
So this is actually, this is a proposed plan SP4. I see a well that seems to be, is that the existing well you're referring to?
I believe so, yes. And then the line would more or less run straight to the house.
And then there was another well for proposed 4-bedroom house,
On Lot 2.
right? And that's
That
kind of
would
at
be
the end of the,
On this plan, it's shown behind the house, so to the north of Lot 2's house. More or less where that setback distance is proposed.
okay. So they're showing the one well behind the dwelling and an existing well that is in front of the other house and in front of the driveway.
Right.
You can, it's like in a gray shade.
Correct, right.
Okay.
To show that it's existing.
So I guess the question is that existing well adequate where it's located then? Or does a new well have to be installed?
Right.
And then, again, I'd want to know for all the wells, we need to make sure, if the surveyor's already done that, great, but maintaining separation distances.
Well, we show proposed well location in the lot off of Walton Terrace. So it's on the east side of the property. The only distances that are required are to the property lines for wells.
Right, but between the existing septics and the proposed
There are
wells.
no, okay, well, we'll have them confirm that, but I believe all those houses up there are serviced by sewer.
Okay.
So, we'll confirm that. There's an existing sewer line which we went through great lengths to locate. So, we'll get a letter or confirmation from the survey that there's no surrounding septic fields.
As far as Walton Terrace, you're saying those are on sewer?
Yes.
Okay,
To the best of my knowledge.
And then the larger lots that are to the east, including the one behind, on the cul-de-sac, do you believe those are also on sewer, this subdivision in here?
I don't know.
Okay. And I guess, I'm not sure, and again, I guess it depends on Orange County Health Department standards. I didn't know that the minimum separation distances are to a lot line. I thought that you had to be separated, even if, septic system's on an adjoining property, you still have to maintain separation distances.
Yeah,
You're right.
Right.
My thought was the distance for a well is only restricted by the property line. In this particular case, we have no surrounding septic fields.
Okay, and that's what we have to confirm for the other
If there were
subdivision.
surrounding septic fields, and there's 100 or 200 foot distance, depending on whether it's uphill or downhill, we all know this.
Right.
So, at this point, I'll get confirmation that there are no surrounding septic fields in the area.
Do we issue?
I think this is in the watershed protection area, so I would be surprised if there are any, because I don't think there should be, but it'd be good to verify.
For this application, we would issue preliminary. It still has to go to the County Department of Health for approval or not?
I don't think so,
Not
because it's
for
only a
realty
minor,
subdivision,
right?
right, yeah. No, it would not.
It's small enough to not require going to Orange County Health Department.
And we're not putting in septic systems either. It would have to go to Orange County Environmental Services for the permits, but that's something that's coupled with the building permit.
Okay. Board members, do you have questions?
If the well is not going to be used, is there a detail for abandonment?
It's a new well.
No, the existing well. If it's not going to be used, it has to be abandoned, no?
Right, if
Should
the
be.
existing well that's in that road right-of-way, if it has to be relocated, then
Are we talking- For which lot?
Lot 1.
I heard that there's an existing well that's not going to be used, so if it's not going to be used, then it should be abandoned in place.
The only existing well that the existing, the well that's located would be servicing Lot 1. That's existing. We're going to be using that well.
Right, and Mark's comment was just it's questionable if the existing well should be used since it's in the shoulder of the private road.
Okay.
With
all right.
salt
Right.
and.
All right, well, that's a thought. Okay.
Right,
that's
so it's
something
the-
we can-
right.
That's something we can address, sure.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
And if you're not going to use it, then there should be notes, is what Anthony's saying, about the manner in which it will be abandoned.
I think New York State Department of Health has particular standards for abandoning and
And-
putting bentonite clay and,
AWWA standard as well.
right. And so both those details should be on the sheet. Any additional comments? No?
I do. I'd like to visit number 2 because this is becoming a circular conversation, so I'd really like to identify it and finalize it. And that is whether or not the road is a part of the calculations for the lot area. So, let's identify that now. And
I don't know, I think I'd want Mike to do some research on that.
Bring the code up, but-
I mean, we could give you a preliminary determination, but I wouldn't want to, without looking at the code fully, or the subdivision regulations specifically, or the road specs, commit to that. But we will look into that.
Yeah, I can't access my server right now, so I can't tell you.
Is that something we can put a goal on, perhaps in the next 2 days? Get a determination, or next 3 days, some type of communication so that this issue is resolved and it allows us to proceed further
Yeah,
in an organized manner.
I think it's important because if it is subtracted out, then there's a question as to the yield
Yes.
for, well, is it a question for the yield? Because this is a cluster. And the applicant did show that they could meet the yield for the conventional.
Right.
So when we do a cluster layout, the planning board is allowed to change the bulk requirements for the individual lots that are created. So we really just need to make sure that the subdivision and the standards, it's clear what the bulk requirements are for the new lots. And if we feel the layout overall is reasonable.
Well, I appreciate that, Bonnie, because we prepared, a design for the conventional
Right.
layout to show that it conforms. If you go to SP5, we reference section 57 about minimum lot area for the conservation easement, and it was 7,500 square feet per lot, and we far exceed that for lots 1, 2, and then proposed lot off of Walton Terrace. Again, though, our lot coverage excludes the private road,
Your lot coverage,
lot area.
lot area. I'm not concerned about the lot area. I think we have to go through the cluster subdivision provisions and make sure that those requirements are met. I also want to ask you, there is a requirement, and it's in the zoning, it's a new requirement, and it's on page 7-22. There are specific house relocation notes that are supposed to go on the plans now. Did you recall putting those on? And this kind of speaks to Ward's question also, and comment about size and bedrooms, et cetera.
Was that page 7-22?
Of the zoning.
And that's house relocation notes, even
Correct.
though all our homes are new?
Correct. And I'm just gonna, you didn't put them on, correct?
No.
Doesn't sound familiar? All right. So it's probably, it's a situation where after the planning board goes through a review of a subdivision, and it's especially more important for larger lots or lots that have significant environmental resources. When we come out of this process, we don't want to have just a building envelope dictated by yards. A house is shown in a location, and then the next thing you know, someone pulls a building permit and they've located it in an entirely different area, for visual reasons, for environmental reasons. So these notes are now to be placed on the maps, which indicate that they will be located as shown, or within a reasonable distance as shown on the map. In addition, some of the notes say the maximum number of bedrooms is not exceeded, so if you're saying 4, no one can come in and do 6 or 7 or 8. Maximum building footprint is not exceeded, so again, if this is what's being shown, this is the expectation as far as a footprint. Maximum. We're not saying you can't jog it, but if you're, we don't want to see 1,000 square foot footprint and then someone come in with a 3,000 square foot footprint.
We have no problem with that. I mean, the site is constrained already by the private road, by the setback requirements. So that's no concern to us. So we
Right.
can add those notes without question.
Right, and that did come out of the rezoning process. The driveway has to meet grade requirements, drainage, driveway curb cuts can't be relocated, et cetera. And you can nominally relocate the house. To be able to show where the house goes, you have to measure distances to the house from 3 lot lines. So take a look at them, because the information will have to end up on the subdivision plan, as far as some of the dimensions. And it's just a matter of adding some dimensions.
Will I think we would add it to the cluster development plan.
Yes,
I would think so, yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay, not the subdivision, okay.
No, it's the one that you'll ultimately build and that the building inspector will be reviewing when someone pulls a building permit. You don't have to put it on the conventional.
That's fine.
And I just want to quickly go through the cluster provisions here. Actually, let me bring it up on the screen so that everybody has an opportunity to take a look. So this is the beginning of the regulations, and it generally describes the purpose of cluster applications. Let me get back here. And so the intent is to preserve steep slopes, freshwater wetlands, the floodplain, et cetera. So this goes through what's to be protected. Then there's the procedure which you've gone through, which is to first prepare the conventional subdivision plan so that we can, as a board, determine the yield, and then we can move forward with the cluster layout. We did discuss at some point whether the board, because they can waive the cluster and pursue a conventional, whether they wanted to, but I think the majority of the board said that we'd be preserving open space, that we wouldn't be getting access from Lakes Road, so therefore the board favored the cluster layout. So the design standards, allowable uses, if you're in certain zones, you're only allowed single-family detached dwellings. But in this instance, you can propose or develop different housing types, but in this instance, you're doing single-family detached dwellings.
Correct.
And I just want to make sure, if it isn't, that it's noted that that's specifically what's being developed.
We noted on the plans.
Going forward, there will be no further subdivision of a cluster lot, and the map note specifying the restriction has to be included on the final cluster plan. So just a map note saying you can't do that. No buildings may be constructed within the open space area, except that the planning board in its discretion may allow outbuildings such as barns or sheds associated with agricultural operations. This is not that, so we will not be building sheds or barns here.
That's correct.
Utilities, you can again be served by individual well, septic, central water, or sewer. And gas, power, telephone cable, other communication services shall be installed underground. So if there's any utility connections, cable, I don't know if there's any proposed new poles, but everything should be undergrounded, and we should have a note that'll be undergrounded. Arrangement of lots and dwellings. This is generally just setting forth standards for minimizing clearing, site building sites. It says a required open space land may not include private yards located within 75 feet of a principal building. Are the houses 75 feet away from the conservation area?
If not, we're awfully close. I mean, the road is 24 feet. Looks like the line is another
62
24.
on lot 2.
Okay.
62 again on lot 1.
So we have to get to the 75 feet.
I don't think
It
we
doesn't
can push
look
those
y-
houses back more.
Yeah, you're not pushing
and
them
have them
back,
still
so.
comply with the rear yards.
Right. It's an issue if we can't.
Can you draw the conservation line? Can you draw the conservation line differently? Or-
I believe our conservation area has to be 50%. Do you have more than 50% or are you right at 50%?
We're right at it.
So somehow it's going to have to be configured to be able to meet the 75-foot requirement. Otherwise, I guess a variance would be required. And the idea was that people could have usable yards. You know, because they can't use the open space necessarily, or if it has to remain restricted, that they should be able to have a lawn area around their property, which is why that requirement's there. Minimum lot area requirements for a single-family detached dwelling, the lot size can't be, may be reduced by 50% of what otherwise would be required, except no single lot should be less than 7,500 square feet. And that's the entire lot, including with the conservation area. So I think we meet that on all the lots.
Oh, without question.
Okay.
On SP5, we have 12,500 for lot 1, 11,900 plus for lot 2, and the upper lot off of Walton Terrace is 9,800 plus square feet.
Okay. And then the minimum yard requirements are established by the planning board. And that's based on, you know, our review of the configuration of the lots, the location of the dwellings, and what we think is reasonable as far as necessary yards. Building height, we cannot vary the maximum height limitation. Open space shall be demarcated, you've done that, and then we'll have a conservation easement on it. And ultimately, there'll need to be a conservation report which indicates the location of the conservation easement, shows where it's being delineated. It's a report that's outlined in the cluster development. And we can make that a condition of an approval. I'm just going through this, D. So, and then the 28, section 5721.8 is where it gets into the house relocation and standard notes. A talks about the limits of disturbance, location, size, footprint and height, bedroom count, and other physical characteristics of any building or structure on a lot depicted on a subdivision map approved after October 9th, 1968, shall be the limit of construction allowed on the lot. Again, speaking to expectations. So I think at this point, we have to address the well location, ensure that it's situated, if there are any septic areas, which we're not aware of at this point, but situated whatever the minimum separation distance is that's required. And then we need to address this 75-foot requirement that the open space can't include the yards within 75 feet of a principal building.
Bonnie, on the conservation easement, if I'm reading the plan correctly, the conservation easement area is itself defined as a separate parcel. And that's entirely appropriate if the town is willing to become the grantee of the conservation easement. That's a decision for the town board to make. If the town board declines that opportunity, we would not want to see that as its own lot.
Correct.
Instead, we would make it part of the other lots, and we would encumber it with a restrictive covenant. And
Yes.
the draft resolution that I prepared has that either-or alternative. What it means, David, is you got to visit the town board and speak to them about whether they are willing to accept status as the grantee of that conservation easement.
After approval?
Generally,
actually, we
here's
should
the
probably do it
problem.
now.
It may change your lot lines, which would present a problem. In other words, if we approved it the way it is and the town board said, no, you'd have to come back to get reapproval. So there's two choices. We could give you preliminary approval, but I think that's really not necessary. But we could just wait while we're working on these other details for you to go to the town board and find out. If they say they're not willing to be the grantee, That's okay, we'll remove that lot line and then we'll just encumber the area with a restrictive covenant. But that's going to be their choice. We can't require them to accept that status.
I think we as a planning board can write a memo to the town board.
And I think they enacted this code. I mean, years ago, they never wanted to be the grantee, but I think it's a different town board and a different approach.
Right, and we'll find out if they want to accept the land, or if they want it to just be shown as a conservation easement area that would be on the 2 individual lots.
So just to make sure I'm understanding this right, if the town board does decide to accept this, this would remove the 75-foot requirement of between...
No, I think it's
No.
from the area conserved or preserved regardless, but it would simply mean that they would take fee interest in the land as a grantee, as opposed to there being a restrictive covenant that would encumber the lot owner's land.
Got it. All right.
It's in some ways form over substance, but it's an important distinction for the town board to make. What they wouldn't want to see is the creation of a lot that they wouldn't take, and now that lot would go for tax sale. There's an important case that occurred across the river. It involved the town of Wappinger. And what happened is the subdivision was laid out with these long lots, and a line was drawn across, and a map note said something like Forever Green. What happened is when that was sent to Real Property Tax Service in Dutchess County, they created tax map parcels for the rear of all those lots in the Forever Green area. And that was fine for 20 years until somebody said, "Man, I got a deal here. I got 6 building lots I bought for pennies." And he goes to the building inspector, and nobody remembers what happened 20 years before. He issues a bunch of building permits. 1 house is complete, 2 are under construction. When somebody remembers, wait a second, there was a Forever Green restriction there, and they go to the building inspector, who of course pulls the building permit, and litigation ensued. Ultimately, it went both to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals and New York's highest court. New York's highest court said that that restriction is valid, even though it was not on any recorded document, merely on a filed map. But it can lead to problems like that when you create a parcel that no one is going to own and nobody remembers what happens to it. So I think it's a better practice that if the town is going to take that parcel, great. If they're not, let's not create a parcel. Let's just have a shaded area that's restricted in terms of what can be done, but it's owned by the lot owners. So I'd be happy to contact Brian Nugent and ask him to take it up with the town board to explain that distinction to them, or you could write a memo yourselves. But it may be, David, that it would be helpful for you to appear as well. But that issue has to be resolved as to how we're going to do it.
Well, I mean, I would be in favor of the homeowners continuing to own that area. I mean, we provided an easement agreement for review. I mean, I thought
That's for
that
the
was-
roadway.
Roadway and for the conservation easement.
Okay, I've seen the roadway one. I'll have to look and make sure I have the conservation one. But it's really the town board's choice. The code speaks to a preference for there being a fee conveyance of a conservation easement, a formal conservation easement that the town would be the grantee. And this is set up in that fashion, unless I'm reading it wrong. Isn't that creating a separate lot?
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah.
So, those meets and bounds of the conservation easement would not to create separate lots. That's to be able to identify the area.
All right, well,
So
maybe
the
I'm reading it
surveyor-
wrong, but
Well, the surveyor included that information so that we would be able to make sure enough land is being dedicated to this
Right.
conservation easement. It's not creating a separate lot.
is that hash line that separates it different than the hash lines that demarcate the 2 lots?
I'm not sure about that, but it says there, proposed lot line, right, it's right down the middle of the 2 lots. North 36 degrees, 51 feet.
And you have it cutting through the conservation easement area. So
Correct,
it-
from Lakes Road up to the back property line.
Again, this code is new. I don't know what the preference of the town board is. To me, that would be a restrictive covenant, not the term is used in so many ways, but the true conservation easement that the IRS recognizes for tax deduction purposes, that the New York State DEC recognizes, it's a bad phrase because it's really a conveyance of land to a qualifying entity, either a land trust or a municipality, for the purpose of a conservation aim. And that new owner, the municipality or land trust, becomes the steward of that land. for evergreen or a do not disturb or a no construction area could be something different and be a restrictive covenant. Our code talks in terms of conservation easement, whether it meant that in the formal sense or simply in the preservation sense, I don't know, but I think it's a call for the town board to make. In the past, the town board was not interested in taking ownership of these areas, but they wrote this new code and they used that term. So I think we need to know what they want to do. I have no problem with being a restrictive covenant, and with the town board having the authority to enforce, but not the obligation to do so, because often town boards don't want to be involved in enforcing a no clothesline restriction and being the ones who have to pay to bring that enforcement action. But we really need to know what their preference is. And it could be a simple communication with them putting it on an agenda to have a consensus. And if they gave us the direction that they never really want to take fee ownership to these areas, then the issue's
Right.
resolved for everybody. This is the first one.
Right. And this may be one where, because of its size, they may say, no, conservation easement's okay, but once you start to get into larger subdivisions and it's substantial acreage, it may be a different outcome. But regardless, we should probably, we should run it by them to ask them what their preference is. But that then actually, does that create a problem then with the minimum lot size? Do we actually almost have to do the easement in this manner? Because if you subtract out the 50% and it becomes an individual lot, you may not have 7,500 square feet per.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we'll write a memo to the board, and we'll mention the fact that right now you're showing it as a conservation easement, which would be retained on the two individual lots. Ask them about their preferences and also specify that, though, if they want that, that creates another issue. And, this may.
Could prevent the, right,
Right.
this subdivision as shown, yeah.
Right. So we will run it by them. And then, again, we still have to get around this 75-foot yard setback requirement, or the principal building from the open space. And,
We can do that.
okay. And do we have GML here? Has it been sent yet for GML?
I think it was. I was going to ask whether we got the report.
I have not. No, I have not gotten this one back yet.
Okay. So we would have to leave the public hearing open anyway, because we couldn't take action without first receiving the Orange County General Municipal Law Review. Since it's on Lakes Road, we need to send it off to the county, or it's been sent. I guess we just haven't gotten anything back yet. So I would propose we leave the meeting open, address these issues, and get back to you. Again, I don't think that the easement area with the road is a concern, because we're creating and we're allowed to change the bulk standards in a cluster subdivision as far as minimum lot area. Anybody have, just before we hold this over, any comments about the layout itself? What your thoughts are?
No, we've tried to move this road any which way, and this is, I think, the only way it's going to work, where the developer can still get what they want, and we're getting as close to what we want as we can.
I think that was the upshot of the consultants or the technical work session, that there's really no other way to make it work.
And this is because we're dealing with private roads, and I'd still love to research private driveways.
We're in favor of that.
Any other? I just don't like to see a lot of impervious area for two homes. Any other comments?
Can you remind me how the private road is going to be handled by the owners? I mean, they all chip into maintaining that road?
Yeah, we'll need to have a private roadway easement and maintenance agreement. David has sent me a version of it. I'm going to suggest some changes. They're not major, but essentially there'll be a recorded instrument that gives each landowner easement rights across that road to their own parcel, and then has a formula that requires them to maintain the road. Doesn't have to be equal contributions, it can be, many of them say that, but they usually have a formula where they meet once a year and put together a budget and do it. And that agreement can be enforceable by the town. Rarely is that needed. Sometimes they work very well, most of the time they do. Even banks will lend on them, not concerned about it. Are there times where somebody refuses to make their contribution? Sure, that does happen, but that's one of the problems with private roads. You buy into it, you know what you're going to face.
Any other comments? Questions? No?
So are we going to leave this open because we did have another member from the public voice some interest in seeing the plans?
Yes, we will leave it open for that as well, and we haven't gotten our GML reviewed. There are some items that still need to be addressed. We need to consult with the town board, and so we will be leaving the meeting open.
If you're going to leave the public hearing open, you should announce the date and time when it will be continued.
When is our next regular meeting?
Regular?
Yes.
April 16th, we do have a couple of hearings that night as well.
Okay, so this will be held over to April 16th. Continue to April 16th
At 7?
at 7 p.m.
Will we be accepting written comments during this time?
Certainly.
All right.
Do we have to make a motion to, or just do we leave
I
it?
think an announcement's good enough for that purpose.
Okay. Any other questions, David?
No.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is Karina Gomez. David, you're representing the Gomez's, correct?
Yes, I am. I'm back.
It looks the same.
I'll do her. Yeah, because I don't know what the...
This was
Ma'am, the person who said they had some questions, is it regarding this application? Okay, it's still another matter. All right, so we're going to deal with this application and then we'll, thank you.
Okay, so at the end of the day, you made changes to this one.
Yes,
I quickly printed and ran out of the office.
okay.
So, you want to, Mike, do you need a copy of this one?
What?
The one that,
No, I haven't.
take one and pass it down.
So I think we probably have a redlined.
They have the first one from
Okay.
2 o'clock.
So this one's from, the one that we're passing down is from 4 o'clock. And you did receive it via email, but if you didn't have a chance to check your emails, this is the latest version.
Hey, thank you.
Let me ask first, are there any outstanding items with regard to septic? Or I think we've addressed most everything?
I have a comment letter, the latest comment letter I have is from, let's see. I believe he has noted on here that it's December 13th, 2018 discussion. He has 2 outstanding septic items.
Okay.
The most recent plan I have is September 27th. I don't know if that's correct.
What do you have? I'm sorry.
September 27th is the plan I have.
The date of the plans.
November 26th. I mean, December 26th.
December 26th. I don't believe I have a copy of those plans.
The last set I have here are September 27th, myself. Does anybody have the December set? A December set?
Bonnie, excuse me, the December set and the September set are the same. In our revision notes, the December 26th set was a ZBA submission.
Okay,
So it just reflected the 927 set. So 927 is the last. Okay, so then we still have open septic issues. I can read them if you'd like.
okay.
Sure. So the first was, is there an as-built of the existing septic? to confirm that,
These are just quick handwritten notes, it looks like.
yeah.
Are these handwritten,
Well,
or was
there-
that part of
There's
the,
handwritten notes on
the,
the existing, or
All right.
on these
Do you-
draft comments that he has.
do you have the previous comments? Because it sounds like it's just a reiteration of a
Okay.
prior comment letter.
Yes, I do. So let's address that. I submitted that this is, we've gone round and round regarding that submission of the as-built. We did it, we noted it on the plan. I've contacted the township. We've got whatever they've had on hand, and that this is all they have. And so, I mean, this is, we reference it. It was a design done by Latham Tully back on December 10th, 1993. I submitted it as an attachment to one of our cover letters. We don't have anything else, you know, that's, can reflect an as-built. That's all the information we can find in the township. So I just asking that we acknowledge that and, you know, move on.
Well, so the requirements, I think, for accessory apartments are that the septic system has to be adequate to be able to support both the existing dwelling and then any additional load from the accessory apartment.
Of
It has
course.
to be certified by a licensed professional to that effect.
Right, so that's in the regulations for accessory
Which-
apartment.
Which we did. We perked it. We gave you the perk test results on SP1. We did it back all the way back in September, and we showed the design calculations for a 5-bedroom house. It's within the range. The perk rates are within the range of a 5-bedroom house. We've satisfied that requirement. We've given whatever information we can find from the township. We've done on-site perks. I've
Well,
witnessed it. I'll
when you
sign it too.
say, when you say on-site perks, isn't a perk test a soil test to determine?
The,
But that doesn't, that's not determining what the maximum
right, so,
capacity is of the existing system.
no, but it is determining the, I guess you could say, the capacity of the soil to absorb
Additional.
the water.
Okay.
The problem
It
is, you
gives
may
us the
have the perk
basis.
test, but you don't have the linear feet of septic pipes. So, you know, that would be the basis for design.
But we do.
Oh, you do?
We show it on the plan, and we reference the as-built, whatever's on record with the town.
So you know how many lines there are and how many linear feet of septic field there are?
Yes, it's on SP1.
That was proposed in 1993.
Yeah. It's 8 rows of 53.7 feet of plastic pipe. We have the approximate location. Again, we used whatever information we could find, and the only well, not the only, the document that was on record was used on this site plan.
Doesn't, when a septic system gets installed, it has to get a letter from the engineer certifying that the builder installed it according to plan? Isn't that a record?
That's my understanding, yeah.
And this was 1993.
Would it be on file with the health department or with the town?
It depends on if it was part of a major subdivision or not. I would assume it would be on file with the town, which I believe is where the applicant received this information from,
I
correct?
think it's a 3 or 4 lot subdivision, because that's how many lots are on the street, right?
It was probably part of just the formation of Katrina Court.
Country Court.
Oh, sorry, Country Court. Where am I going?
On the accessory apartment permit application sheet, there's a bunch of check boxes, and 3 of them were not checked off, and they're all requirements of the submission, and they may have been addressed since, but the first that was not checked was parcel survey prepared by a licensed land surveyor. The next one that wasn't checked was copy of voting records or equivalent demonstrating owner's current principal domicile at the dwelling. And the third is proof certified by a New York State licensed professional engineer that adequate water supply and sewage disposal facilities are or shall be provided. Proof that the premises is served by central water and sewer system may be provided in the alternative. But the box isn't checked, and I guess we're still trying to find out whether we have that. The fact that there is some plan for the septic system before it was built, I don't know that that's the same thing as a certification by a licensed professional engineer that what is there actually is adequate.
Well, it's by a licensed design professional, I mean, is acceptable. And again, based on the information we have, based on the perk tests that were done out there, we confirm that a 5-bedroom usage of the septic complies with the current Department of Health standards.
Not a licensed professional engineer.
Right, that's not, doesn't meet the checkbox of the
Yeah.
application, right?
Bonnie,
Yes.
they have a 50% expansion potential area engineered into that calculation.
I don't know what was required. Do we know what was required back in '93, whether there was a 50% expansion requirement? I think it would depend on what
I
was
don't know.
required
Don't know the answer
in the
to that.
day.
I don't know the answer to that.
I was just trying to see if I could find
out.
anything. So, Mike, could you go through the 3 check boxes again?
Yeah, where is that located? Because we submitted all that information. So
I'm
can we
looking
go
at-
over that one more time?
It's your application form. I gotta bring it up again. There's a piece of the application that says checklist. Very good. The title of it is Accessory Apartment Permit Application. You filed it with us on May 29th. It's typed in, and the attachment section, and all are required. The first that's missing, and it's not checked, is parcel survey prepared by a licensed land surveyor. On page 2, there are 2 missing checkboxes. The first is copy of voting records or equivalent demonstrating owner's current principal domicile at the dwelling. And the last checkbox, not the last one on the sheet, but the next one that isn't checked, reads, proof certified by a New York State licensed professional engineer that adequate water supply and sewage disposal facilities are or shall be provided. Proof that the premises is served by a central water and sewer system may be provided in the alternative. Now, I'm not looking at all of the other attachments, but as of the time it was submitted, those were not made part of the application.
I'll add to that, because I was going to make it a condition, but if there's some items that we need that are in addition, I think we had the signature only of one of the owners, but when we looked at the deed, there were actually 4 people named as owners. So it's the Gomez's, but also there's the other family that owns the property as well,
Great, Grams.
Graham's.
Well, that's why I was surprised to see those names. I didn't remember seeing it. 'Cause it's definitely not on the application. Before signature.
So in the accessory apartment permit application, and we'd actually talked about this, I know, at one of the meetings because I have it circled. The deed says that it's between the people who were, I guess, subdividing the property or whoever owned it, and it says Randall Grams and Sonia Grams as tenants by the entirety as to 50% interest, and Jorge Gomez and Karina Gomez as tenants by the entirety as to 50% interest, all residing at 56 Bon Air Circle, Suffolk, New York, 10901. That's what was provided. So it seems like the ownership is among 4 people, if I'm reading this correctly.
And it sounds like they don't reside there.
Yeah.
Well, this was back in, well, this is dated 2013, this indenture.
Oh, I see, that's the time they bought it, so they wouldn't have lived there then. But we need some proof that they reside there now. Voting records, however you get those, is the preferred method or equivalent, and that needs to be provided. It's part of the application package.
Just quick question, who does reside there?
Gomez's.
The Gomez's. So it may be that the other individuals just may have helped with the mortgage, who knows, but they have some ownership interest in it. But I know there's one community I recall where it was a real problem when everybody didn't sign, because in the end, there was one owner that didn't consent to an application.
I've seen those disputes, yeah.
Unless you submitted an updated application form, but I don't have that. Do you recall, David?
Actually, I don't.
I have to tell, I think we've done 3 different accessory apartments, so they're starting to blend together.
Well, I know we did the voting, it's, you don't have it, it's not a problem. I have
Could
it,
be
I
with
can
the ZBA
resubmit it.
application, so I'll go through that folder in the morning.
Okay.
See if maybe I put it in the wrong one with 2 applications on one account.
Yeah, I'm trying to see, in the application, we have the tax record, property tax record. It indicated that there were 5 bedrooms. But I think that's because of the accessory apartment. When was the accessory apartment created? Because this is a pre-existing condition.
Correct. So that really wouldn't reflect the 5 bedrooms.
So this is saying as of I'm not seeing a date. Sale date 2001, sale date 2013. Date of reappraisal, okay, so date of last physical inspection 2015, date of reappraisal 4/7/2018. And it's stating that there are 5 bedrooms. So if it was done in 2018, that would include the accessory apartment? Is the accessory apartment is 1 bedroom?
Yes.
And then the septic was for 4. Is the remainder of the house 4 bedrooms?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have the layout and then the EAF, but that's all the information that's attached to the permit application.
All right, well, I mean, these 3 are easy. We have the survey,
Okay.
the license survey, it's not an issue. We have the copy of the voting records, and the last item, most municipalities accept a design professional. I've not had a problem with that in any other municipality regarding the verification and design of the SDS system. So I'm hoping that the board would also accept that in this case too.
I think we have to look at what the law requires.
Yeah, I was looking at the form. I assume it
Right.
came from the law. But
Mhm.
No, my understanding is that an architect can stamp septic designs.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the code is, the zoning law is written, adequate water supply and sewage disposal facility shall be available as certified by a New York State licensed professional engineer, except such certification is not required if the building is connected to public water and sewer services. Adequacy of the water and sewer facilities must be demonstrated to the satisfaction of the town engineer during accessory apartment permit review.
Well, even though it says licensed professional engineer, if in fact a architect is permitted to make that same certification, I think you should allow it. Despite what the language says, I think the intent is to make sure there's a licensed professional signing off.
I think if licensed architects are allowed to, are they allowed to design disposal facilities?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I've been
Okay.
told they are, yeah.
So if they are, then I think,
Stated allowed.
I think that's reasonable. But ultimately, this also requires that the adequacy of these sewer facilities be demonstrated to the satisfaction of the town engineer. And I think that's the open question as well. And you had an as-built, you're saying?
Yes,
David?
actually, I have one. I'll submit it again. It's not a problem. I have what we found at the building department or at the town hall, and we'll just submit it again with our next application.
Was it an as-built or a proposed?
In '93, that's kind of hard to say.
Okay.
However, it does have the building department seal on it. So this is what we found. I mean, I have this, you can pass it around. This is what we used, and I'll submit it again with our next application.
Why don't you, can you just scan it and email it to everybody, or to Noreen?
I have it scanned, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, so just scan it. If it's scanned, send it via email to Noreen, and then she can send it around to all of us. And,
And that's an as-built?
well, just whatever you have,
It's the-
whatever it is,
The
just send it in.
document of record.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right. Then there's one other item that we haven't discussed, and I don't know if, Mike, you had a chance to speak to the ZBA attorney?
I did, he promised to get back to me, but he has not been able to.
Okay,
I reported to Noreen that I spoke to him. I spoke to Dave McCartney, and he was not there,
okay,
but his understanding was that those were recommendations only and not conditions, but he was going to double check.
okay.
My understand, remembrance of the meeting is.
It's a recommendation.
They were saying that Steve, I don't remember his last name, started with an H,
Okay,
said that they could not tell the planning board what to do. They could recommend or suggest some things that they would like to see, but ultimately
Thank
it
you.
is the planning board's decision.
That's certainly the flavor of my communication, and I don't think they were aware of the front yard setback issue, that if they imposed a condition that's impossible of performance, they certainly didn't mean to do that. They meant it to be a recommendation.
okay.
And this is my notes from that meeting, granting variance, making suggestions to the planning board. Planning board does not have to accept its usable space, suggestions, not directions.
Okay. So I think it may be just the language in the draft resolution, but if we could get we still need confirmation, bottom line. But operating under the assumption that the planning board does have flexibility as to where that, those spaces can be located, did people have an opportunity to check out the site?
Yes.
And what are your thoughts as far as the location of the parking?
I thought that the location that was on the original plans would be preferable to me. They weren't really, I understand preserving trees, but they weren't necessarily specimen trees. One of them was a double trunker that was half dead and half cut down. It looked like maybe they could cut down maybe 3 or 4 trees to accommodate that parking pad.
Were they more saplings, or were they, what kind
No,
of?
they were hardwoods, but I couldn't tell exactly what kind. But I'd say maybe like 12-inch to 15-inch diameter
Okay,
each tree. Not young, but not specimen type old. you know.
okay.
And they were all
I was also on the
reaching
site.
for the sky.
I was there on Sunday. I would say, yeah, one of the trees may be 12 inches. The other one, when I looked at where the proposed might go, I really feel that that could fit in a space where it would mean the removal of 2 trees, which were sort of central to that space, and that everything else was sort of surrounding that. One was probably 6 to 8 inches, and the other was more significant.
Is there a way that you could get the spaces, let's say, on either side of a tree? I mean, they don't have to be back to back. Is there a way to,
I don't think so.
okay,
I think it wouldn't give the freedom of movement around the vehicles. Particularly where those 2 trees would be right where like your driver's side or passenger side doors wind up. They were really right in the middle.
Are these the 2 trees you're talking about?
No, closer to the shed.
Oh, those are small.
They're
4
smaller.
6-inch diameter.
perhaps we could pass those along to Ward to take a look at.
You wanna take a look at this? This is
Mhm.
4 bedrooms on this.
Does the
My,
variance is written prohibit us from removing any trees?
no, I don't believe so. I think they were probably trying to preserve trees. And my concern would be that I wouldn't want them to move the parking in a location that is very visible to the other adjoining residences. I would prefer that they be set back. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to see 8 trees, cut down if there's an alternative location.
I don't think, based on what I observed, that that's the number of trees that we're talking about. There are quite a few trees between the driveway, the shed, and the property line. And the tree area probably extends onto the adjoining lot.
Actually, we can bring it up.
The question is if we want to avoid
This is a picture of.
removing any trees, there's really only 2 possibilities. One would be, if this'll work, one would be realign the fence closer to the area where the septic field is, if that's possible, and put 2 parking spaces at the far end of the driveway, between basically the shed and the stoop. Or the other would really be to remove the shed. The shed sits on an area that's approximately 20 by 20. From the edge of the driveway, it's just about 20 feet back to the first tree that's really right kind of behind the shed. And then between the fence and the first tree on the lower side of the shed, I guess, as you're coming up the driveway, would also be about 20 feet based on what I measured. So it might not be the best alternative from the homeowner's standpoint, but it might be the feasible answer. Give up a shed, get your accessory apartment, don't take down any trees.
Is that shed on a foundation?
I don't know.
I was going to say, can the shed be relocated?
My gut
It's
feeling is
possible the
not.
shed could be relocated. That might be, honestly, in evaluating the condition of the shed, I'm guessing that shed has about 5 more years before the roof needs to either be replaced or the shed goes. I mean, it's an older shed, and I don't know that to be enough value in moving it when you could just
we
start.
didn't design that shed.
Nor was I suggesting that you did. I suspect the shed is a pre-existing condition.
It must have been designed by an engineer.
I have to believe that shed was there before the Gomes were there, although I didn't ask that question. So that might be the answer. I think that there's enough space where that shed is. I was kind of wondering that when we were at the last meeting and you showed that one angle that's kind of similar to what we're seeing here, if that might be the, it's going to mean some sacrifice. It's going to mean some trees. It's going to mean moving the fence, if that's feasible with where the septic, I'd forgotten when I was on site where the septic was. I'm not sure that you can move that fence at all. So if that's out, then the other answer has got to be where the shed is. It wouldn't be in the front yard setback. I mean, gosh, to put the parking down, you to get below the trees on the same side of the driveway, you're really up against the road. Or you're putting parking in front of the walkway, and either one is a, to say the least, unattractive option. And that's not what the neighbors are going to prefer amongst anybody else.
We're trying to get an image that Anthony took.
Didn't go.
It's bfranson@nelsonpope.com.
Try it again.
Okay. It just may help in the discussions.
Do you want to?
Ward, do you have any reactions as far as the trees?
What I do. I hit something.
It almost looks like you could take, there's like a little more of a sapling in between 2 larger trees, but I just don't have a sense of.
Anyway, just because they're probably too close together to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And you're setting up something for right across the road when we had the last big hurricane and we lost that.
There you go. Anthony? So, anybody else? Thoughts? Anybody who went up?
I haven't gotten a chance to go out there with the sun up yet.
Okay.
How's it look at night?
I mean, there's a one street light not too far from there.
We like that view.
Talk about streetlights.
That's been my
So Jeff, why don't you summarize your proposal?
My proposal would honestly be to either move or remove the shed, put the parking spaces there, and solve that issue you don't have an issue of having it in the setback, even though, of course, the driveway, right, runs right through the setback. But it would also be in the best place as far as view from the street, view from the other neighbors. Yep. You know, small sacrifice, bigger win.
Do you want to speak to the applicant?
And well, first of all, I appreciate the comments of the board. I mean, because we definitely want to have that feedback to continue on with the application. If that's something that the board would be agreeable with the board, then yeah, absolutely.
So
Let's pursue that.
why don't we do
Are we gonna move it
that?
to a location that has a setback issue itself? I mean, if we're not removing it, but moving it, we have to make sure that we can find a location to which it can be moved that meets setback. I don't know what the setback is for a shed as opposed to a building.
I think
It's 10 feet.
accessory buildings,
Usually more lenient.
yeah.
In the interest of full disclosure, so while I was in the driveway and the Gomes' children were in the background, Mrs. Gomes came out to see who the strange man in her driveway was. So I had an opportunity to talk to her a little bit. I don't know whether that's appropriate or not. It's the first time I've been doing a site visit, so she had questions, so I answered them.
Did you have
so
any,
I know I didn't have an
planning
ID
board,
card or
ID?
nothing.
Not done yet.
I felt bad. She believed me one way or the other. And so I did float the idea of either moving the fence, which she would be agreeable to, although I mentioned to her that may not be feasible based on the lot, or the idea of the shed. So I did plant that seed, and she might be amenable to that.
Yeah, no, she told me.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's no question about it. She told me the conversation.
In terms of accessory buildings, it says no accessory building shall be constructed within 5 feet of any rear and/or side lot line. So there's ample space to put a shed.
It's kind of, I mean,
So Dave, you want to make sure that the board feels that way and not just Jeff before you discuss it with the client.
Float it as an option.
well,
Let's see here.
yeah, it's hard to argue. I mean, to save the trees and you have the space, I mean, you make a reasonable argument. So, and I myself am a tree hugger to begin with, so I could see the reasonableness in that. Let's,
So here's I guess a more current picture of the location of the shed and the trees. I think perhaps you could come back with, if trees had to be taken out, can you fit 2 parking spaces? It sounds like you can't, but to measure out whether you would just have to get rid of like 1 sapling or 1 big tree. And let the board just, determine if it makes sense to put it in the where the shed is or by the trees, among the trees.
Is there a strip of grass between the shed and the existing edge of the driveway? I mean, that expands about 10 feet?
I think so.
You mean between the front of the shed and the edge of the driveway?
Yeah.
There's a little space.
Yeah, so
Few
if
feet.
you went from the fence line beyond the edge of the
Yeah.
shed, you would have substantial square footage. Maybe it's just moving the shed back 5 feet, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell from this. Let's see, actually, let me do this.
Make me dizzy.
Yeah, it's too tough. So what do other board members feel? What are your thoughts?
Costs you less money to move a shed than to take down trees.
That's for sure.
Yeah?
Options are
Moving the
good.
shed's not a big deal, and if the 2 trees do seem rather small, though, I'm maybe less concerned than some on
Okay.
the 2 trees,
So
based on their size and how
Right.
many are in that area.
why don't you come back with a proposal, David? See if they can relocate the shed. And then there are just a few outstanding items as far as the application. We'll get final resolution with regard to the sewer. We do have a resolution, but I think we just need to do a couple more items and,
I have two
Don't-
questions.
yes, Anthony?
One is, I have in my notes that it's 5-bedroom plus 1 accessory. Is it 5 bedrooms total?
It's a 4-bedroom house, and the accessory apartment would add a bedroom to it.
So it would be 5 bedrooms. And the plan that you showed says 4 bedrooms. And I guess the bottom line maybe is a workaround. If there's no certificate of approval of the septic system as built, would it be okay for the applicant if they're to put in a letter for the record that the septic system is adequate for whatever total number of bedrooms?
That's reasonable.
I think that's reasonable. He's trying to demonstrate that with the calculations on the first sheet, so.
We agree, it's not a problem.
And then I think when we revisit the resolution, maybe we should say that no more than 5 bedrooms are allowed total in the dwelling to relate it to the septic system. Anthony, you had any other?
That's it.
That was it? Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else? We're good?
No, we're good for tonight.
Yes.
Noreen was handing me something.
I said this was his to go
Oh,
back. I
okay.
don't- Did the as-built go back to David?
No, it's right here.
Okay.
Is it all right for the engineer to hold on to that as-built? Do you have other copies, or you have a digital version, or would you like it back?
We have the technology. That we can do.
Or I could scan it back to you.
That's fine, but I'm almost sure we have it scanned.
Scan of a scan.
We will, do you still want us to distribute that
If you would send it to me, I'll send it out to all
by
the
email?
members.
Then it's not a problem.
Sean just wants his own copy.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right, thank you. And with that, we,
There was a woman who wanted
Yes.
to speak.
so ma'am, you came here, did you have a question, or what would you like to address? Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks, David.
Let me get out of the line. Yes, come on in.
Don't get your picture.
Watch the wires.
Yeah, watch the wires, please.
If you want this, if you could take it.
Good evening. What's your name and address?
Lorna Baptiste, 24 D'Angeles Drive.
Okay.
Right, excuse me. Yes, that's easy. Bring up the microphone over towards you. Thank you.
Sitting back there, I wasn't quite sure I'm before the right body, but then I decided the board has Monroe in its name, so I'm cool. I'm one of the many seniors who use the YMCA 5 days a week. And looking at the board, I don't think any of you would understand how important it is for seniors, understand in that you have not experienced it or at that point of seniorship to experience it. How important it is for us to have a place to go, exercise, where there's someone there at all times to tell us what we're doing right or wrong. Our big push, as you know, is to get the pool. And as you reach my age and get older, exercising in water becomes very important. And I'm just wondering if you could help us. I'm not even talking about the why. I'm talking about my fellow exercisers. Help us get the egress so that we could have the pool installed.
My understanding is that the Y building, well, first of all, we don't have an application in front of us, so we're not a decision-making body with regard to any ingress or egress. And the Y facility is in the village of Monroe. So, correct? Village of Monroe?
It's very
Or
close. I'm
misspeak.
not, I think it is, yes.
So, there is the same equivalent of our board exists in the village of Monroe. And you should make your presentation and have your discussion in front of the village of Monroe. because I think the village board of trustees and the village planning board would be the two boards that would have to make decisions with regard to the ingress and the egress. Definitely the planning board, depending on how the ingress and egress is obtained, it may also involve the village board. So we appreciate your comment. I'm a village resident, even though I sit on the town planning board. So I appreciate your comment, but our board really, unless it involves property in the town of Monroe, we really don't have any decision-making authority over that facility.
Okay, so may I suggest that those of you who are sitting here on a personal basis, so that when you reach my age, you will be able to use the pool at the Wyatt. And I suggest on a personal basis, you just nudge all the people you know so that they could get working. And of course, I will go to their next meeting.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on in.
Thanks.
Ward, do you have anything you want to bring up, or
Anyone else?
nothing?
Going once.
Okay. Anybody?
Before we close the meeting,
Yes, ma'am?
John Queenan sent a letter today
Mm-hmm.
at 4:02
Okay.
with a formal request for us to possibly consider the extension of Sherry Tour trailers tonight.
Extension of an approval.
So here is the letter. I'm telling you, it came as I was
Mike, did you receive this?
I saw a copy of the email, yeah.
running out the door. So if you would take 2 sheets and pass it down, because one is the email to me and one is the letter. Would you guys like?
Sure, please.
If we assume that
There's
it
one
was
of each.
timely submitted, and we'd have to check the file to be sure, then even if you acted later, it would be appropriate. It's when he made the request that's important, not when you grant it.
I have the feeling
It wasn't signed. September 29, 2019? September 2019 hasn't happened.
send them back down to me, please.
So September 18th, 2019. And what are our site plan?
They give Mike a copy. He needs more paper.
Yeah. Well, that was the old code, we'd have to look.
Let me look right now.
Yeah, that I can actually look at.
They don't state what conditions are outstanding still. That's my problem number one.
And their dates are wrong. But
Dates are wrong. They still haven't provided us any sort of document that resembles a master plan.
That word comes up all the time.
Master plan.
Master plan.
And they haven't provided us with a programmatic need of any type for this at all.
So the regulations say in the event a site plan is approved with conditions, the applicant shall have 180 days from the date of approval to satisfy such conditions. Failure of the applicant to satisfy such conditions within such 180-day period shall render the site plan approval void. The planning board, upon good cause shown, may extend the 180-day period for one additional 180-day period. So we have the authority to extend it another 6 months, but it has to be upon good cause.
But I don't think they've shown any reason for this communication, just that they want it.
Right. So,
Let's
in
bring
their
them to the next one.
And is this a previous, was this extended already?
I don't have my file here, too.
I don't know. I was gonna, at least the one positive thing is they're only asking for the 2 months instead of the 6 months that they could have
If
asked
that's
for.
it, that's not enough to vote on it.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
just bringing up that, just to,
No,
just to,
this is a terrible letter.
I agree, there
there was probably a realization that they were at their 6 month,
And he didn't submit.
This was, written 2 minutes before it was handed in.
yeah, this is literally,
Well, maybe they just wanted to make sure they got the request in before expiration. Act
so,
on it in April,
I was going to ask, do we have to act on it?
not now.
And it
I mean,
wouldn't-
You've
it-
taken the position, I think it's the correct one, that it's when the request is made, not when the request is acted on, that determines whether you have authority to do so. So as long as they ask for the extension before expiration, while it may technically expire at the end of the month and you don't get it till April, the request was timely and you can extend it back to the date they asked. But you don't have enough information to know that there was good cause shown or what the status of the conditions is and what's prevented them from satisfying it.
I agree with that. But it's just a request for an extension as opposed to why they need the extension and what is stopping them from satisfying the conditions.
And
So
that's-
I would just, can we just put this on the April agenda?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you want to communicate, we want to know why, what's the good cause, and give us a status report on where the condition satisfaction stands.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody want to add to a letter to them? Anything?
Why status report and what else you need?
Status report, what conditions have been met? What,
And what good
conditions?
cause are they claiming?
Could you restate, how much time do they have?
They have
It's-
6 months from the original approval.
And
Which
then-
would put them at where?
I assume roughly March 29th,
Oh.
right?
well, they're saying September 18th,
Oh, okay.
so like literally right
Well, we'll
around.
have to count the 180 days, they may have missed it. I thought I heard you say the 29th.
Yeah.
Got it, thank you.
I can tell you now.
Because the letter is dated, did we get this today?
Mhm.
Because it's dated March 18th. And they
Well, he
said,
sent one yesterday that I sent to you,
he did, okay.
and it just said, is it possible to get on the agenda, and then he resent this today.
Okay.
I have attached a formal request.
Okay.
So what was the date of the approval?
It's September 18th.
That's what's represented in the letter.
So that would be,
I didn't print yesterday's email.
Do you have a copy of the resolution? Signed?
March 17th is 180 days from September 18th.
Okay.
But March 17th
Was a
is a
Sunday.
Sunday, so it would mean Monday, which was
The day
Yesterday.
you called me.
The day you called?
Well, he did send an email yesterday
The
for
date
me to
of the
forward to you.
letter.
Okay.
That's the one I asked you if you had a chance to look at.
Gotcha. Okay.
well, he has a
Looks like
calendar.
you got in under the wire.
So we'll just table this to April.
The request
Well, hold
is
on.
noted. We'll deal with it
Oh.
in April.
Yes, I agree. At the regular meeting.
Yeah, but right now they're in violation then.
But they're not doing anything, they just...
They shouldn't be doing anything because they
Okay.
don't have,
haven't
they haven't satisfied
Regular, not
condition.
the workshop.
Okay.
Does it matter if it's on the workshop versus regular
No, You
meeting?
can do it either time.
Put them on the workshop because it
Workshop.
sounds like, yeah,
Okay.
because then we can
I will
have them come
reach
in.
out to John
Well, I know I'll be
Clean
here for the
tomorrow.
workshop.
All right. Any other business? Any other
What's he saying
comments?
about April now?
Oh, April 16th, I'm not going to be here.
That's the regular meeting.
Yeah, workshop, that's the one I want.
Oh, you want it at the workshop, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Bonnie, what should I tell George Lithgow about looking at the bylaws? You'll do it at the April meeting?
Yes. With that, may I have I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Is that Jason?
Aye.
An- Any opposed?
Yes.
Any abstentions? Motion carries.